Hello, you beautiful souls. I'm back with episode number 39 of the Unleash Your Life podcast. It's Lane. I'm back after a while away. I've been in the season of assimilation. Integrating is often a big learning curve for me, and I've turned the corner on the season of creation. This is somewhat of a new concept for me, this idea of really getting in tune with seasonal energies. And even though I felt like I wasn't accomplishing what I would have normally wanted to accomplish in that time, I was shifting in another deep and profound way that has me creating from an even better place. And you know what? It's helped me fall more deeply in love with myself. And that's what this show is going to be about. It's why we're on the planet, to fall deeply and madly in love with ourselves. And who's talking about this? I certainly didn't hear it growing up. Before I get going with that, I just wanted to take the time to say thanks for all the kind notes about the episodes that have been meaningful to you. Thanks for consistently showing up, and thanks for helping me spread the word about this podcast. We're now a team together, wanting to encourage each other in this work of awakening. And it's because you're helping me spread the word. So thanks. All right. I'll meet you back here in about a minute. This is the Unleash Your Life podcast, where you're going to learn to rewild yourself. I'm your host, Lane Smith Brown, and I'm a best-selling author and rewilding guide. And over the last 20 years, I've been guiding women back to their truest selves. You see, you were born wild with all the wisdom you will ever need to navigate your life in a beautiful and powerful way. Then, just like everyone else on the planet, you got tamed as you fell under the power and influence of others who were also tamed. All that taming you got as a kid has you convinced you are less powerful than you really are. I call all of that unconscious programming power leaks. And on this show, you're going to discover yours, and then you're going to choose to plug them so you can get back to the wild, wise, and powerful being that you are. So grab a coffee, glass of wine, or a favorite friend, or all three, and let's talk about what living your wild self can mean for you. All right, welcome back. So, I had an experience recently, and it's made me evaluate a bunch of stuff about myself and my work. There's a level of clarity that occurred that will no doubt help some of you understand just a little bit better what we're doing here and how we can make the best possible impact on our quest to eliminate our power leaks. The whole idea of awakening to what is playing in the background is a necessary step to truly understanding ourselves and why it is we've come to the planet. There are processes to help us do that, many of which we discuss in the tools and resources at Weird Hummingbirds. But if you've been listening for a while, I am always looking for a way to make these concepts simpler, easier to understand and implement in our lives. It's not that it makes the work less work, but there is something so valuable about getting early warning signs that you are currently operating out of sync. You are currently working in conflict with what your higher self wants for you. It's like the engine light going on in your car. Yeah, you can ignore it, but eventually you're driving in a black cloud of oily smoke when you could have paid attention at the light going on. Spent less than $100 fixing the problem and saved the engine. Or you're working at your computer and having it act all slow and obstinate like it's out to get you. And then you realize that, it just needs an update. Just sitting there ready for you to download, and everything starts working more smoothly again. When we get these signals, it's so good to, at the very least, ask if there's something we need to pay attention to. Is this signaling something I can use to get at some subconscious programming? So let's look at this concept of self-love. It's what I've been stewing on for the last little while. How many of you experienced in your formative years a strong sense of how valuable you are? Not encouragement for putting your toys away, eating everything on your plate, or being a good girl. I say that facetiously, for doing what you're told. But an all-encompassing love for you. Just being this being, standing there in all your glory, perfect, just as you are, enough, just as you are. If you were anything like me, you were raised by some disconnected people. Hopefully not so disconnected that they didn't love you, but maybe disconnected enough that they did not love you the way you needed to be loved. I think the world as a whole is walking around in the energy of not being loved the way they needed to be loved. They may have been loved by having their needs provided for, and that's no small thing. There are millions of people on the planet who don't have their basic needs met, so it's hard to take that for granted. But let's say how you needed to be loved was by experiencing touch, being held and being talked to in a nurturing way. And what if that was not something that your caregivers could provide for you? What if the way you needed to be loved meant that someone was noticing something about you that was special, unique, maybe an unordinary way of viewing the world? Instead of being accepted and loved for that special and unique and unordinary way of being in the world, they focused on the oddity of it, that you didn't fit in, that your way of seeing the world was silly or fanciful or unrealistic. Perhaps your way of needing to be loved was by having a cheerleader in your corner, someone who spurred you on to try new things. But what you got instead was people who wanted to keep you on the straight and narrow, on a predictable path, on an acceptable path, on a path that would lead to traditional values and a traditional life. As I'm speaking here, this is not an indictment on your parents or mine and the way we were raised. This is not a game of blame or regret, but of healing and transformation. Most of us, we did not experience parents who were connected to their higher self or conscious of their own limiting beliefs in any obvious way. If they spoke of these things, it was often from a religious or cultural point of view, where there wasn't necessarily an acceptance of celebrating who they were or are, but instead an expectation that they conform to a bunch of rules and regulations, written and unwritten. And if that's the way you were raised, those parents were not encouraged to celebrate the uniqueness of their child, but instead stand in fear that that little maverick was going to set out on a path that was filled with danger and disappointment and would reflect badly on them as parents or as people. Now, my parents were steeped in a faith that, from my vantage point, looked very insecure and judgmental. There was a lot of pressure to conform, a lot of pressure to stay on the invisible path that would eventually lead to a reward of some kind, usually not while they were living, but most definitely when they were dead, or so they believed. My father was a sensitive soul. As I look back on some of the interactions with him, he was filled with all kinds of insecurities and questions. He was always looking to the outside for approval, for acceptance. And he felt he was constantly disappointing God. It was very important to him that he was seen as a leader, as a wise man, as a successful man. And he played that game well. Lots of people were convinced that he was who he projected himself to be. But my siblings and I lived with a man who could never measure up to whatever was going on inside of his head. He didn't come to the planet with those insecurities. That need to be approved of by others was a direct result of those early years and what he thought his parents were saying about him and wanting from him. There is no question in my mind that the child who was my father was not loved enough in the way he needed to be loved. My mom was a free spirit, but her mother checked out for all kinds of reasons. When my mom was quite young, she ended up having to be a mom to her siblings instead of a child. She had far more responsibility than should be required of a young one. Through no fault of her own and without her permission, she skipped kidhood almost entirely. There is no question in my mind that that child who was my mother was not loved in the way she needed to be loved. So the children of unmet needs married and had a family of their own. Do you think they were able to meet the needs, the love needs of their 4 completely original and unique offspring? No. Perhaps if they'd done the work of healing, they could. But even that's not a guarantee. You came in unique. Unique in every way, including how you uniquely needed to be loved. Do you think all of your love needs were met in your formative years? Did you fill up completely on all that was important to you? Here's the truth. Even if you got to 95% on each of those ways, your subconscious mind doesn't recognize that you're only missing 5%. It's registering as not full. So now you're out in the world getting or looking to get full. And how do most of us do that? We look for it in the praise or recognition from other people. Maybe a lover, a boss, a mate, or a complete and total stranger. And it's shocking how little we'll settle for. We'll stay in jobs that don't fulfill us because there's a paycheck. We'll settle in relationships that give us crumbs that look like love but taste like manipulation. We'll settle for friendships that feel inclusive and accepting until we have our own opinions, and then we risk falling out of favor. I've come to the conclusion that the only way to fill ourselves up with love that we did not get is to fill ourselves up. After all, we know what's missing. We know what will fill us up. So here's the crazy thing. When we fill ourselves up, everything we get from others is a bonus. We no longer need someone else to make us feel valuable, acceptable, beautiful, talented, capable. We no longer need someone else to tell us we are enough. We have come to those conclusions on our own. And if there is something we want to learn or grow or change, we can do that for ourselves. I see this as a power move. What do you think? I know that what naturally happens when you fall madly, deeply in love with yourself, you will never settle for anything less than you deserve from anyone or anything ever again. When you understand that you deserve more and you've taken the time to fill yourself up, and if your relationship isn't what you deserve, you will either make a move to improve the situation or you will leave. When you understand that you deserve more and you've taken the time to fill yourself up, and if your job or career isn't what you deserve, you will either make a move to improve the situation or you will leave. When you understand that you deserve more and you've taken the time to fill yourself up, and if your money situation isn't what you deserve, you will make a move to improve it. Because if you don't, you would not be loving yourself. When you understand that you deserve more and you've taken the time to fill yourself up, and if your health situation isn't what you deserve, you will make a move to improve it. Because if you don't, you would not be loving yourself. I've told you the story of me coming out of a relationship in my early 40s where I had given away my power to another individual. I had waited a long time to put myself into a committed long-term relationship, and so when I finally found someone who I thought was the right person for me, I gave it my all. Now, I was already doing the work of exploring what was playing in my subconscious mind and why my life was working out the way it was. I was understanding the connection that my energy and my expectations had in creating what was becoming my reality. But I had not done the work of understanding that in order to be in a loving relationship with another person, I needed to first be in a loving relationship with myself. I was not. So that relationship ended with me having no idea who I was or what I needed. I had looked for love in all the wrong places. So here's what I've come to, and what has worked profoundly well for my coaching clients. It is to understand how we can fully accept and love who it is we are, just as we are. When we accomplish this, it becomes impossible to put ourselves into any situation that does not honor the level of self-love. Remember what I said about even if 95% of you needed to be loved and it was not met, it's not that 5% was missing as far as your inner child is concerned. It's that you were not filled up. And what are the chances of most of the most well-meaning parents actually parenting children in a way where 100% of that child's specific needs were being met at the right time and in the right way at all times? I don't think there's a hope in hell that that's possible. I don't think that it's a stretch to say 100% of the people in this world did not get 100% of their needs met while they were growing up. What are those people doing? They're looking for whatever was missing from their childhood, from every other relationship or experience they're having as adults. They're looking for it from their work or the people that they work with. They could be looking for it from their kids. They could be looking for it from their friends or their mate. We can see that all kinds of people are looking for it from social media and complete and total strangers, from complete and total strangers that they will never encounter in any real or significant way. We have been trained to outsource what should be an inside job. And that's why we're here today. What I realized at the end of that relationship I spoke of earlier, at about 42 years of age, was that even though I had been a strong-willed, independent individual who ran her own company and looked successful from the outside, I had no actual idea who I was or what I needed. All I knew is that I was empty. I had grabbed a hold of an individual that was a mere reflection of myself. Both of us looking to the other for validation, for acceptance and love. But neither of us had a strong enough sense of it for ourselves that we had any to spare. And so it fell apart. I was left quite literally in the middle of nowhere, 1,000 miles away from home, coming to a realization that I had given all of my power away and that I had both no clue who I was or what I wanted. And I had a great deal of disdain for the choices I had made and the woman that I was. It wasn't a happy time. I was not in love with myself, but I would be. I began questioning the stories my egoic subconscious mind was telling me. It spoke of my unworthiness, my not enoughness, my undeservingness, and I could see the lie of it. I already understood that I came to the planet on purpose. I chose where I landed, and I came with a gift. But I had forgotten. I too was looking outside of myself for a sense of belonging. I suspect this is going to resonate with many of you out there because I know I'm not the only one. If we do not first fall deeply, madly, and completely in love with ourselves, just as we are, we will never be able to hold on to the good stuff we bring into our lives. It's because we are not convinced we deserve those good things. We may get some change by eliminating certain disempowering beliefs in our subconscious mind about certain things, but as long as we stand apart from falling truly, madly, deeply in love with ourselves, those experiences will be fleeting. We will simply sabotage them in some way to feel the familiar feeling of disappointment, shame, isolation, unworthiness, regret, whatever it is we felt as a child. The most profound reset button we can hit in the course of doing this work is this whole idea of embracing the fact that we are perfect just as we are. We are enough just as we are. We are made from love, we are loved, and we need to get on that bandwagon. So the result of making this effort to fall deeply and madly in love with yourself is this. The next time somebody comes into your life that does not treat you well, or treat you like you learned to treat yourself, they're not going to get your attention. When you don't live from a place of truly loving and valuing who you are and why you're here, you can sit in a job and convince yourself that this is all you get, that it's enough to do the 9 to 5 because maybe you'll get a decent weekend out of your week. Or you can have all kinds of wonderful ideas percolating in your mind, but you're afraid to share them because you're afraid to be shot down. So you hold yourself back from the promotion or the new level of responsibility or better pay. When you are not standing in such a level of self-love, it's reflected in how your friends treat you or the kinds of friends you have. When you don't come from a deep and abiding love for yourself, it affects how you treat your body, how you treat your home, what you do with your time. There's not an area of your life that isn't affected in a negative way when you are not walking in the world with a powerful connection and love for who it is you are, understanding that you came with purpose and intention. This has struck a deep chord in me in recent days, as I look for evidence of where my lack of self-love has been playing out. And it's in the way I've been treating my body. I've not been kind. I've been feeding it more than it requires and not moving it as much as it desires. I've been judging it when it's in pain. I've been horrible, just a horrible caregiver and friend. My excuse has been, it's winter and we've had a lot of snow and ice, so getting out with the dogs has been a challenge. Yet I can see my elliptical trainer every time I leave my office and head upstairs. And then I feed myself more shame or disappointment. Can you see how it snowballs? Truth is, I just got off center for a bit. That's all. I forgot to love myself. I forgot to be kind to myself. But mostly I forgot to keep my word to myself. I made a promise to myself about taking better care of my body, and I didn't keep my word. Did that spark anything for you? I bet it triggered a thought of some kind. Have you ever made promises to yourself that you didn't keep? Perhaps you let someone get away with something when you promised the last time would be the last time. Maybe you did something like I did and didn't follow through on taking care of yourself. It could have been anything, really. Where are you not loving yourself in this moment? How are you not meeting your needs? Where are you being critical and unkind to yourself? Do you need to have better boundaries? Do you need more time alone? Do you need to express yourself artistically, creatively, sexually, intellectually, but you're holding yourself back? Do you need to say hell yes or hell no to something or someone? Do you need to break out of a cycle and go explore something new? How are you not loving yourself? Or maybe even punishing yourself instead? Is it in your relationships with your body, in your work, your expectations, your obligations? How will you fill yourself up? How will you hold yourself and say, it's okay? But keeping my word to myself is important, and I would like to try again. It's okay if this takes a bit of time, but I am making myself a priority. I will honor myself and my needs. What's your next move? Me? Well, I'm taking the dogs for a much longer walk today. The sun is out, the sky is blue, and I want to feel better. That ought to do. Well, that was a whole lot of questions today, but I hope it triggered something for you that's going to start seeing you explore all the different ways you can love yourself in the way you needed to be loved as a child. You know what you need. And what you need is completely and entirely right. If you can figure out a way to meet those needs all on your own, remember, it'll help you never, ever, ever to settle for anything less ever again. Well, I hope that was a meaningful conversation for you. As always, I loved being here. I trust this ignited a wonderful, healthy conversation in your mind. Now, be kind to yourself, be understanding, be encouraging, and keep pushing the boundaries. Keep exploring. And until next time, stay weird, Stay curious and keep popping your corks or plugging your power leaks, whichever one floats your boat. Well, I hope this show rocked your world a little bit. If you want additional resources, check out the links in the show notes or at lanesmithbrown.com. And before you go, please subscribe to this podcast. It's how we get these tools into the world, and this world needs more wild women standing in their authentic power. Do that for me, will ya? Thank you.